Hello, 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 good evening. Hope you're all well. Now, can you hear me is the question. Yeah, I guess you can, there's things going. Thanks for joining those who are here. Do appreciate anyone that has turned up today. I'm going to hopefully have a nice stream today, but today we're going to do some colouring in. So that's what's going to be happening today. Excuse the mess over there. I'm still recording stuff from my Christmas scene, so that's for a future video later on. So I know it's a bit of a stay. Normally I have a screen and everything else, but I'm still trying to piece everything all together. But this is what we've been working on, the Redraw Jazza's art. I've inked it in as well, as I've mentioned, and I've also excuse me, I've also printed it and shrunk it down, so you might notice it's a bit smaller than the other one. And there are two reasons for that. One, because it's easier to colour a smaller picture, which is the main reason. But two, if I mess this up, the original's still fine, and I can make as many copies of the original as possible. So without further ado, let's crack up my pens. Now I'm using Crayola ones. Now these are obviously designed for younger kids. Really, they're not really ideal for this sort of drawing. But for the purposes of what I'm doing, I'm going to be using these ones anyway. They should be fairly decent. They're not terrible, but obviously they're not as substantial, say like Copic or Copic or however you want to say it, or one of the sort of big brands. But that'll be used for different projects going down the line. But for now, these are the ones I'm going to be using. So let's get cooking. So I think the first thing now, the main face of the character is kind of a white face. In fact, actually, you know what? I should really get a picture of my version of the picture. So let me get that up on screen. Didn't even think of that. I should have considered that when I was doing this, but that's fine. So, Redraw Jazza, Redraw Jazza's art, my finals. There we are, finals. There we go. So that way I've got a bit of a reference now, so I can see what I'm doing. And let me put the chat here, so I can see if anyone's on chat. So I've got my phone doing the chat. It's probably better that way anyway. Right, so he does have a pinky skin, so we'll start with his skin. Now, it's hard to actually see the actual skin colours here. That's probably about the most skin colour I've got here, so we're going to give this a try first off the bat. So this is going to be interesting. The reason we got these pens as opposed to some of the other more expensive ones was mainly because of budget, but also it has a good variety of different colours. So I'm just going to base coat on his face first of all. I mean, this might completely ruin it, but who knows. But as I said, this is just a copy of the original, so if I do ruin it, it's not the end of the world. I can always redo it. And I can always rely on the CG, the computer graphics copy. Why can't I see chat now? Hold on. Why is the chat being like that? Oh, can't see chat. That's annoying. There we go. That's what I want to see. I want to see that. Now, to be perfectly honest, I prefer colouring digitally these days. But as I've said, this guy has already been done digitally anyway. So it's not a major thing, major issue. Well, you know what I haven't done is I haven't shared this on Twitter. So let me take off the chat for a second. Oh. Oh, bananas. Alright. I'll do it another time. I'm still not very good with this social media stuff. Right, so I see Space Coat going first of all. If the music is too loud, please do speak up, because I can always turn it down a little bit. I think I've turned it down low enough, but on my headset I can't hear. It sounds the same as I'm playing it, so I don't know how it sounds on your end. So if it is still loud, let me know and I'll turn it down. When I was doing it last week, I noticed it was, when I was looking back on the stream, it was louder than I thought. Even though I turned it right down low, it was still quite loud. Which I was quite surprised at, really. So I wonder how everybody's day has been. Mine was okay. Went in for a job interview today. Well, not a job interview, but I was waiting for a response as to whether I'll get an interview with a company, and unfortunately didn't get it. Or, you know, I wasn't shortlisted, which was a shame. Was a little disappointed because it sounded like a decent enough job, but just the way it goes sometimes. So I've got to keep pushing. Pushing until I get something. But that said, the day generally has been okay. Did a little bit of shopping, which was good. Got some important things. Editing a video today, another video for next week, which is good. Because I started getting back into the actual editing side of things now. She's still being as slow as ever, but at least I'm kind of, you know, getting out there, getting stuff done. Now I'm trying to be careful not to go over this the blood splatters, because that's, I mean, it doesn't matter too much because it's going to be red anyway. But if I can try and avoid going over it, so as little impact as possible on that. You know, I'm very conscious about going over lines. You know, and I've seen other artists who go over lines and don't have an issue with it, which is fair enough. You know, that's their thing. But for me, I'm a stickler for keeping in the lines. The only time when I don't do that is when I'm is when I'm sketching, because when you're sketching, it's important to go over the lines to make sure everything all works out, all the angles work out, and if you took the character away from the image, say for example I removed him from this image, these buildings should still line up in theory. Now I could do it without that and just draw the lines and pretend it's there, but if I draw a building that's wrong and you move the character out there for whatever reason, it's going to look odd. I wonder if I can move this camera. I think I probably need to move this camera a bit because I feel like I've got my back to you. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Let me just try and see if it's move it a bit better. Let me. It didn't even occur to me that didn't even occur to me that I'm not looking. I mean, I appreciate I'm not looking at the camera, and that's because it's difficult getting this set up so that I can have everything facing me. But I will get there eventually. So when I can, I will get this set. But I need better arms, better computer arms. So now at least I can look at you for every so often. So this is just the base coat. All things considered, considering these are Crayola pens and these sort of pens don't blend very well, there's not much streaking going on that I'm seeing, which is really good. When I initially thought there was, but I'm not really seeing much in the way of streaking, which is one of the things with what do you call it? Those other pens, the alcoholic marker pens. Okay, so there's the first level of it. So that's the first sort of go. Let me try and show you on the camera here. He looks orange there actually. He's not orange, I can assure you he's not orange. Let's see if this camera gives you a better, clearer indication of the colour. There you go. He still looks orange, but that just could be my screen. That could just be me. If I move this screen over, because perhaps if I put it on this side, might be easier to see the colours. This monitor's much better. Oh yeah, that definitely looks better. Okay, so that's the initial one. So what I'm going to do now is using the same pen, go over some of the areas and try and put some shading in. Now you have to be very careful with this because these are water-based pens. So if you go over it too many times, you could end up damaging the paper. So you have to kind of let it dry for a little bit. But even then, you've got to be wary that you don't put too much of it because it will affect, it will ruin the paper. But if you're careful, you can add dimension to the lines and make it look as if it's a professional pen, you know what I mean? With the shadings and such. Add that little 3D effect. Now it looks bad right now because it looks over the top, but this pen will eventually dry up rather. So while it looks might look a bit weird at the first, it will eventually come out. And you can see how it's starting to show the shading there, just by putting the same pen over the top. Now, shading faces is another thing I've got to learn to do well. So it's still a bit of a challenge to do it. But you've got to kind of learn. It's all about learning and finding different techniques for doing it. See, already that's starting to look a bit more three-dimensional. So under the neck there's going to be a lot more. See how it's kind of getting some good shading going on there. Okay, so let's do the fingers next. For Crayola pens, they're actually not too bad. They're actually doing a fairly decent job. Now, whether I'm doing a decent job is another story entirely. See how it's drying up now? It's not looking quite so heavy, but you can still see the depth of the character. So just a little bit of shade in there. And this is to help the shirt kind of stand out a bit more. I might still add grey or whatever to it later. But this is just add the initial sort of shade. Let's try and get some of this skin shadow there. Just to show the muscle a bit. Okay. Right. Right, what do we do next? So the next thing is the hair. Because I'm going to let these all dry a bit. Now he's got dark blue hair, but I'm going to put some light blue on first. Some really light blue, just to get, so I've got some undertones. So when I do the next layer, you know, I've got a flexibility to keep the lightness in it. So the initial colour is going to all this light blue. And what I would normally recommend is, if you're doing any kind of ink, you know, any kind of colouring in, is try to stay going in one direction where you can. If you're drawing, like, if you're colouring a hair, for example, you can go in multiple directions, but just make sure that whatever part of the hair you're doing, the strokes you're doing, is one direction. So even though you get the the pen lines, I've forgotten the name of it now, the streak lines on the pens, at least they'll be going in one direction, so they'll match a bit better. This is a nice blue. The thing is, it doesn't quite look the same as the pen lid, but it's still wet, so it might just lighten up later. Because it almost looks as dark as the one on the actual picture, but you know. Okay, so that's that initial hair done. Right. I'm going to let that dry for a moment. I'm going to let that dry for a bit before I put the next one on. Is that the same? That's a different blue, is it? Yeah. Now I'm going to do this here, but I'm not going to do it all blue. I'm just going to add little bits and pieces of the blue, because I want this to feel like it's metal. So rather than just colouring this in straight, I'm just leaving certain areas of it. It doesn't look metal yet, but it will. It will eventually. It's only the initial sort of shading of the blades and such. And I'm going to put some streak on the gun as well, I think. But I'm just going to be a little bit stronger with that though. I think that's probably enough. Maybe a little bit on the belt as well, just to give some metal flavour. So it doesn't look metal yet, but it will. They dry quite quickly, which is good. Now this is an interesting colour. It's kind of a bluey grey. Not used it before, so I don't know if it's going to work, but I think it might help with the metal, giving it the metal look. So we'll give it a try, shall we? Yeah, that way around. Not too bad. Yeah, it does seem to work actually. If I use it sparingly, it does seem to give that nice metallic look. Yeah. I think that looks alright. Just add a little bit here. Right, now I'm going to be a bit bolder here. I'm going to try and add a tint of sort of mauve or violet, because sometimes with metal, if you have an alternative colour, sometimes it can help. I have no idea, I'm experimenting here, but I know that I've seen metal where you've got partly blue and then you've got a little bit of hint of mauve or purple in it. So I'm going to give that a try and see if that helps add a bit of extra flavour to it. It might ruin it, so here goes. But again, going to try to be very sparing. It does seem to help a little bit, which is good. I mean, you judge for yourself if you think it works or not, but I think it's sort of gets it in there. All right. Okay, so that was a nice little trick. Okay, so let's now do some more work on his hair. If I can get the pen back in the box, then I'll go back in. So I get this. I'm gonna get a darker blue for his hair. Just add a bit of shade. Now we've got the shade sort of coming from that side. Which I think now. Yeah, the shade's going to come from this side, I think, because the sun's over there, so it makes sense to have the shade kind of coming in this way. Right, this feels like it's ruining a bit of bug. So I think I've got to be very careful with this, because it has this. Even though it's very dark, it has the potential of ruining his hairstyle. I think if I do any more than that, I think I'm going to ruin his hair. But what I could do is maybe put this blue on, maybe on the top, which is a slightly lighter blue, which might blend in a bit better. Alright. Just a bit wary about ruining it a bit, but what I might do is just add a little bit of blue to his eyes. Right. Okay, so the next up, I think we need to do his mouth, and I think this pink looks quite decent for a mouth, inside of a mouth. So I think that's what we'll do today. Let's add a little bit of pink into his mouth. Now, unfortunately, the tongue has disappeared because of this, but this is where layering a darker level on it helps. So I'll come back to that when it dries out a bit. Okay, I'm going to take a bit of a risk here, and on the gun I'm going to add another element of additional blue, just to help give it that futuristic look on the gun. Might have overdone it a bit, never mind. Alright. Do one of the wires in there. Right, so now that the face has dried up a little bit, let's try and add just a little bit of extra texture on it. So I'm going to very carefully do a bit of pink on it, just to add a little bit of extra definition on his face. While trying to be careful not to do too much. He says, well, he feels he's done too much. It's probably alright, because I say, at the end of the day, it will. it will dry out, or dry out rather. See how the face is even starting to gel a little bit more, come out more. In fact, let me see if I can make this even a little bit clearer. Try and get this camera to be a bit more focused. I think eventually what I'm going to try and do is try and get my 920 to do the downward camera and this one to be a face camera. So I think the 920 is just that bit sharper, but we'll carry on for now. But I think the skin's coming across quite nicely actually. I think the skin's working. Now I've got to make sure that we show that the guy has, you know, a chest. Yeah, that looks good. Nice. It's coming along quite nicely. How's everybody doing out there? You doing alright? Okay, shall I take a small risk? We'll take a small risk on this. Not going to do too much. Just to see if I can enhance the metal a little bit more. Just putting just a hint of green in it. Now, extremely carefully, and it's just an experiment, I'm going to try a little bit of yellow and see if it adds a bit of a shine on it. Oh, that's not, that's actually fluorescent yellow. We don't want fluorescent yellow. That's going to overpower it. It's not normal yellow. Alright. Okay, so let's sort this gun out because the gun handle needs some work. So we'll take this grey again, this grey bluey colour. We're just colouring the gun handle. Now obviously I'm not going to get it all coloured in tonight, but definitely going to give it, at the very least we're going to try and get him coloured, or with a base coat on him. At the very least we're going to try and get that much done. Actually, I'm going to give it another little once over. There we go, we're getting a bit more of a metal-y look now. Sometimes you just got to be bold. That does look a bit more like metal. Yeah, that looks a bit much more metal-y now. Oh, we need to do this bit down here as well. A lot of this is just experimental. So there's a lot of people out there that they say they can't draw or whatever. That maybe at the time you're right, you can't draw at that particular moment. But it doesn't mean you can't draw. It all comes down to just practice and keep working on it. But I think I know for me, I'm very what's the word? I'm very much of a perfectionist. So I like to kind of let me just turn that down a little bit more. I think. I feel like it's just still a bit too loud. There we go. And so sometimes I don't like taking risks, so I kind of hold back and don't do very much. But I think the thing is, that could be the reason why you don't think you can do it. It's because you're holding back, because you don't think you can. You don't try. You don't push yourself. You don't try and go out, get out your comfort zone. So sometimes you just have to kind of get out there and just take the chance. Have a go. Give it a try. But because the more you do it, the more you kind of step out your comfort zone and try it, the more likely you're gonna get better, and you're gonna see things and learn new things and new tricks that you didn't know before. For example, creases on clothes. That was something that I found very, very tough. I personally found it very difficult to do it. now I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it, but I'm a lot more confident than I used to be at doing clothes and making them look, making the creases look like actual creases. Not easy, but it just took practice, being bold and giving it a shot. So in other words, basically, the more you put the fear on and you don't try because you don't think you can, then the less likely you are to ever do it. But if you just apply yourself and actually give it a go, you might surprise yourself. I think he's coming on quite lovely. He's a vicious looking guy, but okay, so what should I do? What bit should I do next? Right, I'm going to do the nails because I haven't really focused on nails. Just get them out of the way. That's it, that's the nails done. Actually, I can probably put a little bit more hint of orange on it. Just a hint. Nice, yes. Okay, so what next? Oh, well, let's get this blood sorted. Let's get this blood splatter sorted. I'm actually going to start with a colour I wouldn't have normally considered, but I'm going to consider it right now. And this is skin colour pink. And the reason being is the lighter colour first, and then add on the red and the darker red later on. Because hopefully it should mean that I'm layering it. It's all about layering on the different elements. And although I could have done, thinking about it, although I could have done this when I did the skin, it's probably better to do it this way because now it will show up more when I do the red later on. Now the only downside of these pens is that although they've got fine tips at the end, they are quite thick. So it's very hard to get a really good thin line on it. Okay, so that's the initial blood stroke. Add a little bit of pink. In fact, that's even giving the effect without even the red. I haven't even put red on it, and already it's giving that effect. That's looking good already. Now, I'm going to take a risk and put a bit of red in it, but I might need to put some dark red later on, once it's dried up a bit. But I'm just going to add this. Because although blood is red, real blood, you know, it tends to have a bit of a very dark red tint to it. So if I want it kind of be realistic looking, definitely to add some darker red elements to it. Alright. Okay. Right, so I'm going to add, before I do the metal pits here, I'm just going to, there's some wiring inside of this, so I'm going to do the wiring first and get that all sorted. In fact, I wonder if I can make this camera just a little closer. Just try and make it so you can see a little bit more. There you go. Let's get some wiring in there. Let's have some purple, and you've got to have red wire, but I can have dark red wire. Cool. And we need some black. That's purple, so we get some black. I'm just going to literally behind the actual wires, I'm just going to make it pure black. I think it'd be easier than trying to overdo anything. It'll also make everything stand out more. Right. Now, this next one, I can make it all yellow, but I'm going to try and leave a bit of white as well. So I'm going to try my best to leave a hint of yellow, white space, and hopefully it should make sense why I'm doing that in a moment. But see, it's very difficult with these pens. Right, now a hint of orange. You probably, some of you might know where I'm going with this. You might have an idea what I'm trying to do here. it is a tricky effect to pull off, especially in pen anyway. And then we want a very dark brown. I wish I could focus this camera. Don't know why I can't focus this camera. It's very, very blurred. Not sure this is pulling it off. Yeah, I don't think that's really, but I was trying to make it look gold, but it wasn't. Don't think it's really having the desired effect. Okay, what I'm going to do is, you know that fluorescent pen that I used earlier, I'm going to see if this helps improve it. So, a bit experimental, but it might bring it back a bit. It might not at all, but okay. This is actually good. I'm really getting into the effects of this. Again, I'm trying not to go overkill. But I do think this is kind of helping all this. I'm liking it, I'm liking it. Good, 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 good. Okay, so make these metal strips, I think, like a light metal grey. These light strips on these arms here. In fact, while we've got the grey out, I might as well do the flagpole. In fact, we'll do the shoes as well while we're at it, because they'll need to get coloured as well at some point anyway. I think now is as good a time as any. Or shoe, I suppose, because you can't see the other one. It's hidden. Okay, right, so now that the tongue has kind of dried up a bit, let's do a bit of work inside the mouth now to try and bring his mouth out a little bit. So we'll start on the inside part of his mouth first. Okay, so let that dry a bit more. And I'm just going to put a hint of yellow inside just inside the eye a little bit. Because inside your eye there is a little bit of yellow there, if you've ever noticed. Right, so let's put a little bit more shade on his shirt, bring that out a bit. How long have we been streaming for today? Alright, we've been streaming for about an hour, so we'll go on for a little bit longer. But obviously I'll need to think about ending fairly soon. All I'm doing is I'm adding very little tiny blobs of area of extra dark, because the thing with creases, there's always different levels of shadow. It's not all one straight colour. So what I'm just trying to do is just add that definition, and also helps bring out the 3D element to it as well. Right. Right, then one last layer of pink to the skin. and after this I'll need to leave it. Because again, I'm trying to be very careful not to put too much. Right, hopefully I haven't messed it up a bit. But it's difficult to tell because it's still dry, still wet. It's difficult to tell sometimes. Won't really know until it dries up. Right. Okay, so now let's add the dark red to the blood and make that really stand out. Oop, dropping the pen. Right. Use this one on the pole. And a really light blue. Just trying to make this pole stand out a bit more. That lid just doesn't want to stay, does it? Excellent. Right. So I think what we'll do is tonight we'll finish off with the do the trousers because we haven't done those. Actually, let me do a bit of work on these shoes a bit. Then we'll finish up with the trousers and we'll call it a day there today, and then we'll come back next week to do a little bit more on this character. Obviously the bit that's going to take the longest is the buildings at the back, but we can do that last. Now I know gold and black usually go quite well. Sorry, red. For gold, you only have a bit of black in gold as well. So I'm hoping that'll bring it out a bit more. Cool, right. So we'll start with a very light brown on the trousers first, just to get them filled in. And as I said earlier on, just try to go in the one direction where possible. It's not always possible, but if you can try and go in one direction, it just means the streaks you get will at least face the right way. Now eventually you will obviously have to go into a different direction, but as long as you go in a different direction it makes sense. So here for example you've got his biceps. Not his biceps, whatever you call those ones by the back of his leg. There we go. So I'm trying to add a very light, thicker line, contour line on his leg. But again, just be wary that when you're using water-based pens, when you go over lines too much, you could end up tearing the paper. Because you're effectively adding water each time to it. So try to allow some time to dry. You can get away with probably doing a couple of strokes like I'm doing right here. But if you do too many at one go, it will burn into your paper, and on top of that, you'll get bits at the end of your pen as well. I'll tell you what, I like the way. I don't think you can't probably see it because I say that unfortunately the camera's a bit on the blurry side. Does it help at all? No, it doesn't. I need to figure out how to get the software for this so I can fix, make that camera a bit sharper. But I think next time round I'm going to swap the cameras over and have this one on there, and because for this other camera doesn't seem to pick up. Oh, it's moved a bit now. Doesn't seem to pick up a very clear image, which is a bit annoying. Right. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit this brown on here, even though it doesn't need it. I just think it will help just to sell some distance on everything. Alright. Okay folks, well I think I'm going to call it there. I think that's fairly well done so far. I'm going to show it to the other camera so you can hopefully see it a little better. There we go. So you can get a bit of an idea. So this is what it looks like close up, with all the colours on it. So all backwards here. So that's where we're at the moment on this. I think, all things considered, I didn't know if we were going to be doing the colouring today. I think we've done quite well with him. Now, the challenge is going to be what to colour the buildings in the background. Should I just make them all different variations of grey? Because I'm thinking that's what I probably need to do. Is just make them variations of grey so it doesn't detract from him. So I think that's probably the way to go with that. But that's going to be the toughest part. So I'm going to scan this one in, and then on the next thumbnail you'll see this one on the next thumbnail. But I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. If you are new to my channel, this is the first time you've come along, be sure to give hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next part of this episode, and make sure you hit the notification bell and set it correctly so that you get a ping as soon as I'm about to go live, or I've got another art video coming up, because I do try to put art videos on Tuesdays. For the moment I'm going to be streaming, but I do try to do art videos on Tuesdays. And if you do enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps out the channel and helps other people know that this is, helps YouTube know that this is content that people enjoy. So have a wonderful evening or day, whatever time where it is where you are. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you later. Bye bye. Okay. So I will say I've got to get better at this. So, bye.